Power interruption in the city for at least a second time in a week. More fireworks and drone shows are on the way. Vice Premier He Li-feng meets U.S. Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen for the second day in a row. Good evening, and thank you for joining us. The city experienced another widespread power glitch today, the second time in a week. This as CLP Power's electricity supply system in Tuen Mun had a brief voltage dip this afternoon. And that led to more than 100 people being trapped in lifts across Kowloon and the New Territories, and triggered multiple false fire alarms. After the voltage dip, the Wong Tai Sin district saw numerous reports of people being trapped in lifts, including Upper Wong Tai Sin Estate and T Oi Court.
The elevator of it is stopped. Walk through 14th floor. It is, I cannot imagine that.
Because you see here, we need to climb up to 20 meters. So if the lift cannot operate very well, so I think that is quite not convenient for us.
Mr. Zheng said he saw the lights flicker for 1 to 2 seconds. The Fire Services Department said they were conducting rescue operations in response to the voltage dip at around 1:30 p.m. and members of the public are advised to stay calm if they're affected by the incident or got stuck in the elevators. The Hong Kong Velodrome in Cheung Kwan O shuttered for emergency repairs owing to power glitches. Escalator malfunctions at Wangpo MTR station as well, with workers rushing to restore services. Shortly after the voltage dip, the city saw more than 120 reports of elevator entrapment and at least 30 cases of fire alarms going off. CLP Power said the temporary voltage drop occurred at 1:29 p.m. at the 400,000-volt power supply system in Tuen Mun, but there were no interruptions in electricity supply. The Electrical and Mechanical Services Department said CLP Power notified them about the incident at 2:01 p.m. and the power company said it suspected the voltage dip was caused by an equipment malfunction in its Lung Ku Tan power plant. The government has asked CLP Power to submit a report within 4 weeks. Just a week ago, another voltage dip took place with more than 50 reports of lift entrapment. A preliminary investigation from CLP Power suggested a hill fire in Yuen Long Shap at Heung might have affected the overhead electricity lines and led to the power dip. Electrical engineer Ho Wing Yip said the power firm should step up inspections in terms of frequency and scope to prevent similar incidents from arising in future. Train services on the MTR's Kwun Tong line were disrupted today because of a defect. It is the third straight day a defect has affected MTR trains. The incident happened at around 1:30 p.m. Trains traveling between Wangpo and Tu King Lang had to slow down by 15 to 20 minutes after a rail defect was detected. Normal service resumed at around 2 p.m. after the faulty train was moved away. On Friday, a signaling fault occurred at Yau Ma Tei Station while cracks were found on rail tracks at Tsim Sha Tsui Station the previous day. The two incidents led to journey disruptions on the Tsuen Wan line and the Kwun Tong line. Lawmaker Gary Zhang, also a former MTR employee, suspects the railway company is short of frontline staff. The Hong Kong Tourism Board said firework and drone shows will be staged for the public in May and June. The government earlier said they will regularly hold firework and drone displays in a bid to attract tourists and boost the local economy. The Tourism Board said the first fireworks display will be performed in Tsim Sha Tsui at 8 p.m. on the 1st of May, the start of the Golden Week holiday. The drone show will start from 8 p.m. on the 11th of May at the Wan Chai Temporary Promenade. The Tourism Board said the themes of the shows are linked to local festivals such as the Buddha's birthday. Speaking on the radio program, the executive director of the Tourism Board, Dane Chang, said the purpose of the regular shows is not simply about attracting tourists. Chang said authorities hope such events can bring businesses together to create a better atmosphere for visitors. The second Hong Kong Pop Culture Festival was launched today. Lim Mo Seng I was at the festival.
An An outdoor music concert was held at the central lawn of the Victoria Park this afternoon, an opening event of the Hong Kong Pop Culture Festival. The festival's launching ceremony was attended by Secretary for Culture, Sports and Tourism Kevin Yeung and lawmaker Kenneth Fok. The music show will continue across the weekend, with performances coming from Hong Kong and overseas, such as Japan and Australia. While today's weather may not be the best for outdoor activities, some residents bought picnic mats and enjoyed the music performance. This man who lives nearby said his family plans to spend the afternoon at the festival.
I come to Victoria Park quite often, and if there's some music to watch, I thought that's quite nice for the family to do. I think right now the weather's quite nice. This is nicer than being really hot. So I was planning on coming earlier in the day, but it was raining, so I just pushed back the time we came.
Some shops and workshops are set up on the site. This is a sound healing workshop where individuals can join sessions led by a sound healing therapist. For more active activity, one can join the a cappella workshop.
The public can also visit Memory Lane, where they can explore different classic Hong Kong film scenes and redesign costumes, such as A Guilty Conscience. Memos 9, TVB News.
The demonstration scheme for the municipal solid waste charging program has been running for a week now, and there have been reports of residents facing difficulties in adapting to the scheme. An executive council member said the government will take feedback from citizens into consideration. Tommy Chung, the LegCo member from the catering sector, said over 1,100 tons of food waste is produced each day, and the catering sector does not have the manpower for their classification. He said he cannot see how the 20,000-odd licensed eateries can do that on August the 1st. Meanwhile, Executive Council member Dr. Lam Ching Choi, who also chairs the Council for Carbon Neutral and Sustainability Development, said time is needed for citizens to slowly change their habits related to the handling of rubbish. The police have launched a 3-month taxi ambassador scheme to combat taxi drivers overcharging in Lan Kwai Fong. They are the taxi ambassadors. To prevent taxi drivers from overcharging passengers, the ambassadors recorded each person's journey information on cards, including their destinations and estimated taxi fee. The cards were then given to the passengers. Police said they will carry out the scheme at 2 taxi stands in Central between midnight and 5 a.m. every weekend for 3 months. Vice Premier He Lifeng continued talks with U.S. Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen in Guangzhou today. Xinhua News Agency said the two sides agreed to discuss a range of economic and financial issues, including balanced economic growth in both the United States and China. Daniel Rao tells us more.
Vice Premier He Lifeng met with the visiting U.S. Treasury Secretary in Guangzhou for the second successive day. The meeting was reported to last for 4 hours. Much of the talks focused on China's manufacturing overcapacity. Janet Yellen said Washington is seeking a fair competitive environment for American companies and workers. She said the two sides will create 2 new economic groups dedicated to growth in domestic and global economies, as well as anti-money laundering. She told reporters China has acknowledged U.S. concerns, but that it might take some time for the difference between the two sides to be resolved.
I think the Chinese realized how concerned we are about the implications of their industrial strategy for the United States, for the potential to flood our markets with exports that make it difficult for American firms to compete, and that other countries have the same concern. Now, this is a complicated issue that involves their entire macroeconomic and industrial strategy. It's not going to be solved in an afternoon or a month.
The Xinhua News Agency said the two sides agreed to discuss a range of economic and financial issues, including balanced economic growth in both the United States and China. Xinhua also said Beijing expressed grave concern over American trade and economic measures that restrict China. When they met on Friday, He said he hopes the two sides can create a good investment environment for companies of the two countries. Yellen travels to Beijing today to meet officials including Premier Li Qiang, Finance Minister Lan Foan, and People's Bank of China Governor Pan Gongsheng. Daniel, TVB News.
And still ahead, rare earthquake in New York shocks the Big Apple. Joe Biden visits site of the bridge crash at Maryland. And UN Secretary General calls for independent probe over Israel's killing of 8 workers. Welcome back. In Taiwan, the quake-ravaged Hualien County was jolted by yet another earthquake this morning, scaled at magnitude 5.3 this time. It's one of the hundreds of aftershocks that have struck the island's east coast since the magnitude 7.4 earthquake hit Hualien on Wednesday. The death toll has risen to 13. Public memorial services were held today to mourn for the victims. Taiwan authorities set up the memorial service at this funeral parlor in Hualien for both the victims' families and the public. This as the island's strongest earthquake in 25 years took at least 13 lives. Among the victims was Ms. Kang, a teacher who returned to the collapsing Tianwangxin building hoping to rescue her cat, but instead lost her life. Her colleagues said her cat was like her family member, and Ms. Kang was a person who respected and cared about all creatures and lives. Ms. Kang's student here said her teacher is no longer in pain. Crews were working to tear down the 5-story Tianwangxin building, but as it was leaning further at a precarious angle, demolition work has to be suspended. Part of the building's exterior wall was removed, revealing the apartment's chaotic state. Because of safety concerns, residents of the Tianwangxin building have been barred from collecting their belongings from their home. After the quake, several other buildings have been listed as prone to collapsing. Authorities gave a half-an-hour window for residents at some premises to retrieve their belongings. In the hardest-hit area of Taroko National Park, search efforts continued at the rugged mountainous terrain. Rescuers recovered the body of a 21-year-old missing woman buried under boulders along the Shakadang Trail. But among this family of 5, only the bodies of the father and the eldest daughter were found. With the reopening of some road sections, a few hundred tourists are being evacuated from the hotel near Taroko National Park. Clearing efforts at this border-hit section of Suhua Highway are also underway to reopen the roadway. A rare earthquake rattled the east coast of the United States on Friday, shocking people who are not accustomed to such tremors. The magnitude 4.8 quake shook millions of people from New York to Philadelphia. NBC has the story.
Scenes like this are typically out of the West Coast. But just before 10:30 this morning, a 4.8 magnitude earthquake rocked the New York City area, with shockwaves felt 300 miles away, stopping people in their tracks at the barber and rattling nerves inside this coffee shop.
Schools normally
watch as the earthquake disrupts a UN meeting.
It's an earthquake?
Yeah. EarthCam even capturing the Statue of Liberty shaking.
So you think this crack is from the earthquake?
I do. Janelle Jensen lives by the epicenter in New Jersey, which sits near a major fault line.
The entire house was just shaking. So in my head, I just thought that there was going to be an explosion.
Crews and first responders now sprayed across the region evaluating buildings. Several homes in Newark had to be evacuated, and runway inspections prompted ground stops at JFK and Newark airports. Remarkably, no serious damage or injuries have been reported.
We are going to be reviewing all potentially vulnerable infrastructure sites throughout the state of New York.
It's the most significant earthquake to rock the East Coast since 2011, and the strongest one in New Jersey in nearly 250 years.
This is a rare event. The Earth was releasing some stress that had built up between the two plates, and it'll now settle down for a long time.
As shaken Northeasterners try to do the same.
I'm a little jitterish, yeah, because you don't experience things like this in New York.
U.S. President Joe Biden got a first-hand look at efforts to clear away the remains of the collapsed Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore in Maryland in the U.S. This as cranes, ships, and diving crews work to reopen one of America's main shipping lanes. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers hopes to open a limited access channel for barge container ships and some vessels, moving cars, and farm equipment by the end of this month, and to restore normal capacity by the 31st of May. President Biden got his first up-close view of the devastation aboard Marine One. On the ground, he received a briefing from local officials. Biden also greeted police officers who helped block the traffic to the bridge in the moments before it was hit by the ship, which helped avert an even larger loss of life. He reassured those affected by the collapse that his administration was there for them.
To all the military members and first responders, and most importantly, the people of Maryland, I'm here to say your nation has your back, and I mean it. Your nation has your back. The damage is devastating, and our hearts are still breaking. Eight construction workers went to the water when the bridge fell. 6 lost their lives. Most are immigrants, but all were Marylanders. Hard-working, strong, and selfless.
In Los Angeles, police and the FBI are continuing their investigation into the theft of some $30 million in cash from a money storage facility. One security expert says it is incredible that someone could gain access to a facility that holds so much money and doesn't rule out an inside job.
This is obviously a professional job, and the joint was cased. In essence, persons unknown were able to gain entry through a perimeter fence, through a ceiling, and somehow walk off with $30 million in cash. Well, I would certainly consider an inside job based upon the fact that from everything I've read so far, I saw nothing of camera coverage being activated. The alarms weren't activated.
The burglary over the Easter weekend is among the largest cash heists in U.S. history. Few details about the theft have been publicly reported. Media reports identify the facility as a location of Garda World, a global cash management and security company in Sylmar. The Canada-based company also operates fleets of armored cars. United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres said he wants an independent investigation into Israel's attack on an aid convoy on Monday that resulted in 7 deaths. This after Israel's military admitted it had made mistakes and sacked 2 commanders who played a part in the attack on cars carrying workers from charity group World Central Kitchen. Guterres also appealed for an immediate ceasefire, the release of all hostages held by Hamas, the protection of civilians, and the unimpeded delivery of humanitarian aid into Gaza. Nasvi Karim has more.
Israeli forces thought they were tracking Hamas vehicles that had earlier been identified. They said it was too dark to see the World Central Kitchen logos emblazoned on the roof of the cars. 2 commanders have been sacked and others disciplined. Under pressure from many countries for accountability, Israel's military, the IDF, has admitted it made a grave mistake in the killing of 7 international aid workers.
This tragic mistake could and should have been prevented. The strike on the aid vehicles is a grave mistake, stemming from serious operational failures, mistaken classification and identification, errors in decision-making, and strikes that were conducted in violation of standard operating procedures.
For United Nations Secretary-General Antonio Guterres, though, who was responsible for the attack is not important as why it happened, as he called for an independent investigation into the incident.
The Israeli government has acknowledged mistakes and announced some disciplinary measures. But the essential problem is not who made the mistakes. It is the military strategy and procedures in place that allow for those mistakes to multiply time and time again. Fixing those failures requires independent investigations and meaningful and measurable changes on the ground.
In a statement, the charity group WCK denounced Israel's investigation as inadequate and also wants a neutral probe. Without systematic change, there will be more military failures, more apologies and more grieving families, it said. Monday's attack killed 3 British citizens, a Polish aid worker, an Australian, a dual US-Canada citizen and their Palestinian driver. It came with Israel under increasing pressure to pay more attention to civilian casualties in a war that has seen 33,000 people killed in 6 months, mostly women and children. Meanwhile, China's deputy permanent representative to the United Nations called on Israel to implement last month's Security Council resolution demanding an immediate ceasefire during the Muslim holy month of Ramadan. Dai Bing also said China supported taking further actions to ensure the resolution was being adhered to. Nazri Karim, TVB News.
And that's the news. Thank you for watching.